Hey everybody, this is Teacher Stamati. I'm going to explain how to use the Dictate feature on Microsoft Word so that you can use it to help in your writing on these assignments for quarter 3. Now we're going to be using this in conjunction with our editing checklist that hopefully you've had a time to look over in order to efficiently write down our thoughts and get them edited. So I want you to look at Microsoft Word's Dictate feature up here. It's a little microphone. And if you click it, it starts listening. And it's writing down what you're saying on the document. To pause it, you can just press the Stop Dictation button again. Pretty simple. Now, when you're talking to the Dictate feature, you're going to notice that there's a lot of errors that pop up. For instance, right here it says to pause it, you can just press, period, these stop dictation. All right, that doesn't make much sense, right? Obviously they spelled pause it wrong. This word actually means to theorize, not stop briefly. So we're going to go over how to edit a dictation. I'm going to talk just freeform about a writing prompt that I read, which is how does your ethnicity affect your identity? So I think I'll talk about that for a couple of minutes, and then I'll take you through my editing process using that editing checklist. My ethnicity affects my identity to an extent. My father is Greek. My mother is an American, white American. But interestingly, my father was born and raised in Africa, in what's now Zimbabwe, and then spent the later part of his young adulthood in Greece. And so I come from a multicultural household, and I do have some connections to my Greek heritage for sure. I lived over there at one point in my life as a child. I've been back several times. I speak some of the language, and I'm familiar with a lot of the customs. So while it does impact my sense of self and having a very Greek name, I do consider myself more of an American in just my identity, right? But at the same time, I'm proud of my Greek heritage and what it brings to my life. Okay, so there you have it. Let's have a look at the checklist for editing. So here are the points. Read and ask, will this make sense to a stranger? That's huge. Are there capital letters in the title? Well, we don't have a title, so we don't need to worry about that. Are there capital letters at the beginning of sentences? Is there punctuation at the end of sentences? Are proper nouns, names, places, things like that capitalized? Are my sentences complete? Do they have a subject, a verb, and an object? In other words, what's the sentence about? What is that topic doing? And what are they doing it to? All three of those need to be present in a complete sentence. And then spelling. All right, so will this make sense to a stranger? In this case, we're going to have to translate that spoken word into something that makes sense in the written language. My ethnicity, period, affects my identity to an extent. All right, well, right there, I'm going to need to change that. So my ethnicity affects my identity to an extent. My father's Greek, and my mother is an American, white American. So I'm just going to say is a white American. Nope. But interestingly, my father was born and raised in Africa in what's now Zimbabwe. He then, let's change that from and then to he then spent the later part of his young adulthood in Greece. And so I come from a multicultural household, and I do have some connections to my Greek heritage. And I do have some connections to my Greek heritage, for sure. The for sure thing, not in academic writing. I don't need to put that. It's enough just to stop at that statement there. I lived over there at one point in my life as a child, so I'm going to clarify that. I'm going to be more specific for one. I'm going to say I lived in Athens for a year as a child. I've been back several times since, and I speak some of the language. There we go. I speak some of the language, and I'm familiar with a lot of the customs. I don't need that, so. Instead of saying it does, I'm going to say being Greek, or having. How about having Greek ancestry? Does impact my sense of self. So even having a very Greek name affects how I see my, say, cultural heritage. I'm trying to be specific here. I'm going to put a however. However, I do consider myself more of an American. At the same time being proud of my Greek heritage and what it brings to my life. Okay, so we've gone through that checklist. I've asked, does it make sense to a stranger? Are there capital letters where they should be? Is there punctuation where they should be? Are proper nouns capitalized? Are there complete sentences? And is everything spelled right? So now if we go back and we reread it, it's going to sound a lot better. My ethnicity affects my identity to an extent. My father's Greek and my mother is a white American. But interestingly, my father was born and raised in Africa, in what's now Zimbabwe. He then spent the later part of his young adulthood in Greece. And so I come from a multicultural household, and I do have some connections to my Greek heritage. I lived in Athens for a year as a child. I've been back several times since. I speak some of the language, and I'm familiar with a lot of the customs. Having Greek ancestry does impact my sense of self. Even having a very Greek name affects how I see my cultural heritage. However, I do consider myself more of an American, at the same time being proud of my Greek heritage and what it brings to my life. Okay, so I still think there's room for improvement there. Some clarity, getting rid of some repetition, and what have you. But as you can see, this can be a really efficient way to get your thoughts out and to begin that editing process. I hope you find a lot of success using this method. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to your ELA teacher.